The House will be in order. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, the Chair will postpone further proceedings today on motions to suspend the rules on which a recorded vote of the yeas and nays are ordered or votes objected to under Clause 6 of Rule 20. The House will resume proceedings on postponed questions at a later time. For what purpose does the gentleman from Missouri seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I move to suspend the rules and pass the bill H.R. 8873, the Recover COVID Unemployment Fraud and Banks Act as amended.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
Union Calendar Number 585, H.R. 8873, a bill to recover unclaimed pandemic-era unemployment compensation funds held by financial institutions or escheated to state unclaimed property administrators and for other purposes.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from Missouri, Mr. Smith, and the gentleman from New York, Mr. Swazi, each will control 20 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Missouri.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and submit extraneous material on the bill under consideration.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of the Recover COVID Unemployment Fraud and Banks Act, led by my Ways and Means colleague, Representative Beth Van Dyne, and Representative Tom Swazi. As the lead sponsor of this legislation, Representative Van Dyne has been shining a spotlight on the fraud epidemic, even from her earliest days serving on the Ways and Means Committee. Unemployment insurance benefits are a target-rich environment for fraudsters. According to the Government Accountability Office, between $100 to $135 billion in COVID-era unemployment benefits are estimated to have been taken by fraudsters using eligibility loopholes and stolen identities. Of that money, a Department of Labor Inspector General investigation found that nearly $1 billion of fraudulent COVID-era unemployment benefits is currently frozen and being held in financial institutions across the country. At one financial institution, the highest balance on a single card was $76,000. At a second financial institution, $56,000. The statute of limitations for prosecuting COVID-era unemployment insurance fraud has already begun to expire, limiting the amount of money law enforcement can return or the number of criminals that they can bring to justice. Time is of the essence to recover the money stolen and rightfully owed to taxpayers. This bipartisan bill establishes a new federal task force to work with states to return the fraudulent unemployment benefits sitting in banks to American taxpayers. The task force will develop model processes and guidances necessary for states to reclaim funds in a cost-efficient way, issue guidance to financial institutions on the legal path for returning funds, and establish due process protections for claimants whose identity was stolen as part of the crime. Additionally, the bill doubles the statute of limitations for COVID-era unemployment insurance fraud prosecution from 5 to 10 years. As of last year, the Department of Labor reported more than 150,000 open complaints, and the Department of Justice had more than 1,648 open investigations regarding pandemic unemployment fraud. Prosecutors need more time to hold criminals accountable. Every day Congress waits to pass this bill is another day that another fraudster will get away with stealing money that rightfully belongs to taxpayers and individuals in need. The Recover COVID Unemployment Fraud and Banks Act passed 41-0 out of the Ways and Means Committee. This bill has also received the endorsement from the National Association of State Workforce Agencies, the Taxpayers Protection Alliance, and the Strategic Services on Unemployment and Workers' Compensation. I urge my colleagues to provide a similar level of support and advance this to the Senate and President Trump's desk. I yield back the balance of my time. I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. The gentleman from New York is now recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Without objection.
I rise in support of H.R. 8873, the Recover COVID Unemployment Fraud in Banks Act. And I thank Chairman Smith, and I want to especially thank my colleague, Representative Van Dyne, for sponsoring this bipartisan common sense bill. Will help root out fraud, protect vulnerable Americans, and help return stolen funds to the states who were robbed. We have to remember that COVID was a really terrifying period for our country. Everyone was vulnerable. Hardworking Americans lost their jobs, homes, and loved ones overnight. Many struggling families were forced to rely on unemployment assistance to make ends meet. 22 million workers lost their jobs, and about a quarter of all U.S. workers received unemployment benefits. As a result, states issued billions in unemployment benefits, some of it on prepaid debit cards through contracts with banks. These benefits were meant to help families afford their basic needs during the lockdown. These benefits kept more than 5 million people out of poverty as they faced the threat of mortgage defaults, utility shutoffs, and hunger. Unfortunately, while people were isolated and overwhelmed and desperate for reliable information, criminals and fraudsters exploited those vulnerabilities and attacked unsuspecting Americans. In fact, domestic and international cybercrime rings weaponized stolen identities. That is, they stole people's identities. And they used loopholes to actually apply for unemployment insurance using the fake identities that they had stolen. And they applied for this federal pandemic aid. Right now, as I speak to you, some of this stolen money is still sitting untouched in debit cards. Even worse, investigators estimate that the majority of fraudulent debit cards as a result of identity theft, and that many of the victims have no idea that they were even targeted. These are working families and senior citizens. Cyber criminals have figured out how to take complete advantage of our system. They wait to withdraw the funds from these debit cards until, and this is the important thing, they wait until the statute of limitations expires on each case, and therefore avoid the legal consequences for stealing. According to the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, FinCEN, in 2021, banks experienced $212 billion in suspicious activity related to identity. That number increased to $394 billion in transactions in 2023. The statute of limitations for prosecuting many of these pandemic crimes is 5 years, meaning that consequences began expiring for some of these criminals in March of 2025. This has already resulted in the loss of hundreds of millions of dollars of taxpayer funds. So we have to act now before we lose these millions of dollars. Congress has to be united in going after fraud and protecting Americans from illegal scams and identity theft. We have an opportunity to take that action today by supporting H.R. 8873, Recover COVID Unemployment Fraud in Banks Act. This bill would extend the statute of limitations for the remaining cases where it hasn't already expired and create a task force to support recovery of those funds identified by the Inspector General that can be recovered cost-effectively without diverting time or money from future fraud prevention. Every time a debit card that was issued using stolen identity is detected, in addition to recovering the money, this bill ensures that the victim of the theft is notified and provided with resources. This is critically important because if the criminal has used the victim's identity to apply for pandemic unemployment insurance, chances are that that criminal is going to use that stolen identity to commit other crimes as well. By extending the statute of limitations, this bill would allow the Office of the Inspector General to complete at least 300 current investigations into large-scale unemployment insurance fraud and potentially recover those funds for the taxpayer. By supporting this bill, Congress can help states focus their energy on the most cost-effective prevention and recovery efforts. Money recovered by the states will help ensure that state unemployment insurance systems are able to prevent fraud and pay earned benefits on time and accurately to unemployed Americans in the future. This is especially important right now. Gas prices are too high. Grocery prices are too high. Healthcare prices are too high. And too many Americans live in fear of losing their job and being unable to afford their family's basic needs. We have a responsibility to eradicate fraud, hold fraudsters accountable, and keep Americans and their identities safe from harm online. I'd like to once again thank Representative Van Dyne for sponsoring this common sense bill, and I urge all members of the committee to support this legislation. And thank you, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Missouri is now recognized.
Thank you. I yield as much time as she may consume to the gentlelady from Texas, Ms. Van Dyne.
The gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in support of H.R. 8873, the Recover COVID Unemployment Fraud in Banks Act, which I was proud to introduce with my bipartisan partner, Representative Swazi of New York. This common sense legislation creates a federal task force to work with states to recover unspent federal pandemic unemployment funds that remain frozen in financial institutions and return those taxpayer dollars to the U.S. Treasury. But Congress must act quickly. Last December, the Department of Labor's Office of Inspector General issued 2 fraud alerts, identifying nearly $1 billion in unspent federal employment funds frozen by banks because of suspected fraud. Those funds now are sitting on millions of prepaid debit cards that states use to distribute supplemental unemployment benefits during the pandemic. But more than 6 years later, many of these accounts have simply been forgotten. So they remain unreconciled by state workforce agencies, and in many cases have even been transferred to state unclaimed property divisions, making recovery even that much more difficult. Without congressional action, hundreds of millions of dollars of taxpayer dollars could be lost permanently. So the Ways and Means Committee has made combating pandemic unemployment fraud a top priority. Earlier this year, the Work and Welfare Subcommittee held a hearing that examined the scope of this problem and the consequences of failing to act. During that hearing, the Department of Labor Inspector General testified that the fraud alerts covered prepaid debit card accounts across 21 states, and that more than $200 million in suspected fraudulent funds had already been transferred into state unclaimed property programs. H.R. 8873 addresses this problem by establishing a federal task force led by a national recovery coordinator to partner with states in identifying, recovering, and returning those federal unemployment dollars to taxpayers. The bill also extends the statute of limitations for prosecuting pandemic unemployment from fraud from 5 years to 10 years. And this provision mirrors H.R. 1156, the Pandemic Unemployment Fraud Enforcement Act, which passed the House last year with bipartisan support. Federal investigators are still actively pursuing hundreds of pandemic fraud cases. Since October 2025 alone, the Department of Labor Inspector General has brought 59 criminal matters to prosecution, resulting in charges across 131 individuals and more than $16 million in recoveries. Extending the statute of limitations ensures that prosecutors have the time that they need to hold fraudsters accountable. This legislation has earned bipartisan support from the National Association of State Workforce Agencies, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, the Taxpayers Protection Alliance, and Strategic Services on Unemployment and Workers' Compensation. Every dollar stolen through fraud is a dollar that cannot serve hardworking Americans or reduce our nation's debt. It's not too late to recover these taxpayer funds, and it's not too late to hold criminals accountable. H.R. 8873 gives us the tools to do both. I urge my colleagues to support this bipartisan legislation, and I yield back.
The gentleman from Missouri reserves. The gentleman from New York is now recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I have no further speakers, and I'm prepared to close.
Gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself the balance of my time. H.R. 8873, the Recover COVID Unemployment Fraud in Banks Act, is a common-sense bill that helps eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse, recovers stolen taxpayer dollars, and protects some of our most vulnerable citizens, including older Americans. At a time when too many families face the uncertainty of unemployment, high gas and grocery prices, and seniors are forced to choose between food, rent, and health care, we can't allow fraudsters to get away with stealing funds meant to help hardworking families. We have a responsibility to root out fraud, hold bad actors accountable, and protect Americans and their identities from being exploited ever again. I again want to thank my colleague, Representative Van Dyne, for working in a bipartisan collaborative fashion on this common sense legislation, and I urge my colleagues to support this bipartisan bill, and I yield back.
The gentleman yields. Gentleman from Missouri is now recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself the remainder of my time.
Gentleman is recognized.
I'm glad the Ways and Means Committee was able to come together in bipartisan unity and bring this important piece of legislation to the floor. The American people expect Congress to root out the fraud in the critical social safety net so many rely on, including unemployment insurance. To date, only $6 billion of stolen UI benefits have been recovered. It's shameful that these benefits were stolen from vulnerable Americans in the first place. It will be equally shameful if Congress doesn't pass the bipartisan bill and recover the fraudulent unemployment benefits we know are sitting in banks and prosecute more fraudsters. I want to thank all my colleagues, but especially the leaders of this bill, Representatives Van Dyne and Swazi, for their leadership in fighting fraud. I yield the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields. The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill H.R. 8873 as amended? Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, 2/3 being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended, the bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. For what purpose does the gentleman from Missouri seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I move to suspend the rules and pass the bill H.R. 5347, the Healthcare Efficiency Through Flexibility Act, as amended.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 5347, a bill to amend Title 18 of the Social Security Act to ensure the availability of appropriate collection types for quality reporting under the Medicare Shared Savings Program and for other purposes.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from Missouri, Mr. Smith, and the gentleman from New York, Mr. Swazi, each will control 20 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Missouri.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and submit extraneous material on the bill under consideration.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of the Healthcare Efficiency Through Flexibility Act, led by Ways and Means Committee members, the Health Subcommittee Chairman, Mr. Vern Buchanan, and Representative Jimmy Panetta. As the lead sponsor of this legislation, Congressman Buchanan has been a strong champion for ensuring that our healthcare system is focused on the right outcomes, including improved patient health through chronic disease prevention, rather than Washington paperwork mandates. This bill ensures that complex reporting requirements do not overwhelm healthcare providers or distract them from their primary job, caring for patients. Accountable care organizations, or ACOs, are groups of healthcare providers who are responsible for improving patient health and reducing spending through value-based care. More than 500 such ACOs, comprising nearly 700,000 medical providers, cared for over 12 million Medicare beneficiaries just last year. In their 14-year history, ACOs have saved taxpayers $12 billion. ACOs are required to submit data on patient outcomes and operations, known as quality measures, to the federal government to track their performance and determine their shared savings. The current system for reporting quality measures is labor-intensive. Some ACOs use as many as 15 different electronic health record systems to track and report this data. One health system spent $5.6 million and 100,000 staff hours on reporting in a single year. Digital reporting could ease this burden, while potentially saving $14 billion in national health costs and investing resources in better care. However, the lack of guidance disrupts operations and means digital reporting has yet to lighten the load for many medical providers. This bipartisan bill provides stability for quality measure reporting and flexibility for smaller provider practices. It also establishes a pilot program for digital reporting to determine best practices. This policy is particularly helpful for over 12,000 small, rural, or independent providers who are committed to lowering cost and improving patient outcomes, but often lack the sophisticated software needed to comply with a digital reporting regime. Medical providers should not waste precious resources and man-hours on reporting data to Washington bureaucrats when the need for patient care is so great. This bill ensures that ACOs can put quality patient care first. I urge my colleagues to support this legislation, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Missouri reserves. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Chairman Smith. Again, I rise in support of H.R. 5347, the Healthcare Efficiency Through Flexibility Act, which was introduced by two of my good friends, Vern Buchanan from Florida and Congressman Panetta from California. This is a common-sense, bipartisan bill to improve care for Medicare patients while reducing burdens on healthcare providers. The bill does this by expanding quality reporting options for accountable care organizations. These organizations, accountable care organizations, are groups of doctors, hospitals, and other healthcare professionals that work together with the aim of providing better care to patients on Medicare. They do this by coordinating their efforts and sharing information with one another rather than working separately. These organizations were created under the Affordable Care Act to improve health care quality and to lower costs. When an accountable care organization is able to improve care and reduce costs, they get to share in the savings generated. The legislation would provide for a wider variety of quality measure reporting methods to be used in Medicare through the year 2029. It also creates a digital quality measure pilot program to ensure any transition to digital quality measures continues to assess care quality and reduce burdens for providers. The Healthcare Efficiency Through Flexibility Act is supported by the National Association of Accountable Care Organizations, America's Physician Groups, Epic Systems, Oracle Health, Accountable for Health, and the Healthcare Information and Management Systems Society. Doctors in my district tell me, like many of my colleagues all the time, that they want to spend more time caring for their patients and less time with paperwork and medical record systems. Today's physicians are bogged down in insurance paperwork and are severely underpaid because Medicare reimbursement rates have not kept up with the rate of inflation. Physicians work incredibly hard every day to care for us, our loved ones, and our communities, and they deserve to be supported so they can continue to provide quality care for patients across the country. This bill is a step towards ensuring that physicians have the support they need to provide the best care possible for their patients. The Healthcare Efficiency Through Flexibility Act received unanimous support from the members of the House Ways and Means Committee, and I urge my colleagues to support this bill on the floor today. And I thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from New York reserves. The gentleman from Missouri is recognized.
Thank you. I yield as much time as he may consume to the gentleman from Florida, the Vice Chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, Mr. Buchanan.
The gentleman from Florida is recognized for as much time as he may consume.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank our Chairman Smith for his incredible leadership over the years. I rise in strong support of my bill, the Healthcare Efficiency Through Flexibility Act, which helps minimize burdens on value-based care organizations. We must move away from fee-for-service. As someone that's been in business for a long time, the incentives are wrong. That's part of the problem. The more you do, the more you make. The sicker you are, the more you make. And I just don't like that. Not to say doctors take advantage of it, but it's just the incentives are wrong, and we need to fix that. That's why I'm a strong supporter of accountable care organizations. Americans deserve better, and the focus needs to be on quality of care, not quantity. As our health system continues shifting towards value-based care, we need to do everything we can to make health care more supportive, especially in ACOs. ACOs and the Medicare share portion of it in terms of the program, they save annually about $2 billion annually. My bill ensures a smooth transition to digital reporting to physicians, can focus more focused on their patients themselves. I want to thank Mr. Panetta for his bipartisan leadership and helping me working together on this. And I want to thank Leaders Solis and the Whip for letting me bring this to the floor today. I urge my colleagues to support Healthcare Efficiency Through Flexibility Act. And with that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Missouri reserves. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I have no further speakers. I'm prepared to close.
The gentleman from New York is recognized. Gentleman from Missouri. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield the balance of my time. H.R. 5347, the Healthcare Efficiency Through Flexibility Act, is a common-sense, bipartisan bill to provide more flexibility when accountable care organizations report on the care they provide to their patients. This bill ensures that the CMS provides a smooth transition as it improves these reporting requirements, thereby reducing confusion and administrative burdens for physicians who are with us at the most vulnerable times in our lives. While Congress continues to work on other legislation to address physician payment issues and more, I urge my colleagues to support this bill that Mr. Buchanan and Mr. Panetta have worked on together in a bipartisan fashion, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman from New York yields back. The gentleman from Missouri is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself the remainder of my time.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you. This bill before us today was approved with total support by Ways and Means Republicans and Democrats. The purpose of value-based care is to implement solutions to some of this nation's most pressing health challenges, including the high cost of care. Digital reporting of quality measures holds the promise of relieving the administrative cost associated with accountable care organizations. However, that potential does not do doctors, patients, or taxpayers any good when the rules and timeline for digital reporting of quality measures are uncertain. Ultimately, this bill keeps medical providers at accountable care organizations focused on providing better health care at a lower cost that eliminates the potential distraction of complying with new digital reporting requirements that are yet to be finalized. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill H.R. 5347 as amended? Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, 2/3 being the affirmative, the rules are suspended. The bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. The chair lays before the House the following enrolled bill.
Senate 629, an act to amend the Agricultural Credit Act of 1978 to remove barriers to agricultural producers and accessing funds to carry out emergency measures under the Emergency Conservation Program and for other purposes.
Gentleman from Nebraska seek recognition.
Mr. Speaker, I move to suspend the rules and pass the bill H.R. 7128 as amended.
Report the title of the bill.
H.R. 7128, a bill to extend the Terrorism Risk Insurance Program and for other purposes.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from Nebraska, Mr. Flood, and the gentleman from Missouri, Mr. Cleaver, will each control 20 minutes. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Nebraska.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous material on this bill.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, I am including in the record the CBO estimate for this bill.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
I want to start today by thanking Chairman Hill, Ranking Member Waters, and my co-lead on this bill, Congressman Andrew Garbarino. All of us have worked together on legislative texts that would reauthorize the Terrorism Risk Insurance Program while also making changes that will protect taxpayers. This legislation would reauthorize TRIA, the program established by Congress in the aftermath of the September 11, 2001 terrorist attacks through 2034. We are so fortunate that we have never seen a TRIA claim in the program's entire history, and I hope that we never, ever see one. However, if this program is going to continue to exist with a public backstop, we should ensure we update its charter to protect taxpayers in the event of future claims, and we should work to ensure the certification process is transparent. Allow me to briefly walk through the changes this bill makes to TRIA. Number one, this legislation increases the amount of losses that must result from an event for it to be eligible for review by the Department of Treasury as a terrorism risk insurance event. The current statutory threshold is $5 million, and this bill would increase that to $10 million for events in 2029 and later. That change will keep this threshold in line with inflation, and it will put in place appropriate protections for taxpayers from future claims. This legislation also provides a couple new deadlines or shot clocks, as you may have them, for the Department of Treasury to certify whether an event is an act of terror. That process would work as follows. First, Treasury would publish its intent to examine a potential event more closely in the Federal Register. They must publish this notice within 30 days of initiating their review of an event. Then, 90 days after publishing that notice in the Federal Register, Treasury would need to come to a decision about whether that event qualifies as an act of terror. If Treasury needs more time, they could extend that deadline up to a year after the original event occurred. Because the program, again, thankfully, has never been tested, we don't have much of a case study in how Treasury's review process would work today. What we do know is that markets tend not to react well to uncertainty. With no active deadlines for review, the current process leaves a lot of room for ambiguity and uncertainty. We want to ensure that if, God forbid, we are in the position of reacting to a potential terrorist attack with the Treasury review, there is sufficient structure to the process to provide insureds and insurers with the information they need on when to expect Treasury's review to conclude. With these changes, there will be transparency for everyone in the market regarding when Treasury is undertaking a review of specific events and when they can expect a final decision on whether an event is covered by TRIA. I am so pleased to have bipartisan support for this common sense reauthorization of the Terrorism Risk Insurance Program. Mr. Speaker, I am now offering 7 letters of support for the record on behalf of this bill.
Without objection.
I urge all of my colleagues to support this bill, and I reserve.
The gentleman from Nebraska reserves. The gentleman from Missouri is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
I rise to support H.R. 7128, the TRIA Program Reauthorization Act of 2026, sponsored by Representative Flood. I'm pleased that today we are considering this critical legislation to reauthorize the Terrorist Risk Insurance Program for 7 years. This is a bipartisan bill, as it has been in past reauthorizations. I want to first thank Chairman Hill, Ranking Member Waters, Representative Flood, and our staffs for working to ensure long-term certainty and availability of affordable terrorism risk insurance all across the country, which small businesses, hospitals, universities, not-for-profits, and others rely on. TRIA was first enacted after the September 11th terrorist acts. After the attack, terrorism risk insurance all but disappeared, and any coverage that could be found was extremely expensive. Without terrorism insurance, commercial reconstruction in New York stalled. raising the threat of larger economic fallout. In response, Congress passed TRIA in 2022 to provide certainty for insurers and policyholders and access to terrorism risk insurance by creating a federal backstop in the event of catastrophic losses. Since then, the program has effectively done just that. As we look back nearly 25 years since 9/11, it is important to recognize the federal government's role in supporting economic development through TRIA. Our role in Congress as stakeholders unanimously agree with that act. TRIA is set to expire at the end of 2027, and by reauthorizing the program ahead of that deadline will offer desperately desired certainty to policyholders moving forward. This legislation will provide a long-term reauthorization through 2034 and make targeted but sensible updates to the program. The bill would increase the threshold to certify an individual terrorism event to require more than $10 million in property and casualty insurance losses from the current level of more than $5 million. It would also codify the existing regulatory requirement that Treasury provides public notice in the Federal Register within 30 days of beginning the process of certification, determination, and require Treasury to insist its determination within 90 days of that notice. To address minor technical feedback from Treasury, the bill will now allow the Secretary of the Treasury to extend its review period for an additional 365 days if there is insufficient information at the time to determine certification. I would also like to thank Congresswoman Velasquez and Congresswoman Presley for their efforts on the bill, as their communities were directly impacted by tragedies caused by terrorism. I urge all of my colleagues to support this essential legislation, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Missouri reserves. Without objection, the gentleman from Arkansas, Mr. Hill, will control the remainder of the time. The gentleman from Arkansas is now recognized.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is now recognized.
Well, Mr. Speaker, let me thank Chairman Flood and Ranking Member Cleaver of the subcommittee, and certainly our full committee ranking member, Mrs. Waters, for their work with the majority to craft this extension of the Terror Risk Insurance Act, H.R. 7128. The reauthorization of this program is important, and I want to thank, on a bipartisan basis, those who've worked to bring it to fruition. Every member of this body, Mr. Speaker, including you, my friend, knows where they were on September 11th, 2001. That day changed everything, including how America thought about risk. Before those attacks, the private insurance market handled terrorism risk like any other. After 9/11, no insurer could price it or absorb it alone. Congress subsequently created TRIA in 2002. The purpose of TRIA is spelled out in the original law. Section 101B states that TRIA is designed to provide for a transparent system of shared public and private compensation for insured losses resulting from acts of terrorism in order to protect consumers. That's the goal here, to give policyholders access to the financial protection they need and confidence they need to build skyscrapers, sports venues, and malls, and employ workers that drive our economy. Each reauthorization is an opportunity to look at what's working and what's not, what adjustments are needed to keep delivering market certainty and stability. As time has passed, quirks in TRIA have appeared that make it harder for those policyholders to get their claims paid quickly and fully, and left insurers adrift in the lurch of a clunky will they, won't they certification process. Mr. Flood's bill today proposes a modest set of improvements that will add clarity to the certification process and makes it easier for insurers to pay their claims in a timely manner and more easily for policyholders to recover financially when they need those payments the most. Throughout this process, we've sought feedback from members on both sides of the aisle and others as we've moved to get out in front of this program's scheduled expiration in December 2027, so that everyone would have an opportunity to review and debate the modest improvements contained in this measure. The reality is that terrorism is now, unfortunately, a permanent fixture of American life. Whether you're in Los Angeles, the Big Apple, or Little Rock, this risk does not respect geography, and it does not go away. I urge my colleagues to support Mr. Flood's bill, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Arkansas reserves. The gentleman from Missouri is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to enter into a colloquy with the chairman. Mr. Chairman, I was appalled by reports that a FEMA employee used their authority entrusted by the United States to determine access to federal aid based on a political yard sign. Whether we're talking about FEMA or the Terrorism Risk Insurance Act, this type of action violates the mission of federal programs that Congress designs to work for all Americans. Likewise, H.R. 7128 is also designed to avoid anything like that from happening in the future with regard to the Terrorism Risk Insurance Program. Congress passed TRIA shortly after the horrific September 11th terrorist attack in an effort to ensure all businesses, not just some, could access terrorism insurance coverage. Since then, we have repeatedly reauthorized the Act to provide certainty to all American businesses and the insurance market. However, a capricious use of TRIA would undermine the certainty, and for that reason, some of the changes we made to the Act would ensure that certainty is a part of what both sides believe to be necessary. Mr. Chairman, I know you agree with me on this matter, and I value your thoughts as well.
Is the gentleman yielding?
I yield to the chairman.
I appreciate the gentleman yielding, and I agree with his assessment. It's true that TRIA was designed to create certainty, not doubt, for our businesses, indeed our economy at large, after something unthinkable takes place. It requires insurance companies to make standalone terrorism coverage available to their clients, who can choose to purchase it or not, in addition to their traditional business insurance coverage. That was the system we devised more than 2 decades ago to provide continuity after a large-scale terrorism event, as well as to provide businesses for the fastest path to economic recovery. It simply would not work within the spirit of the law or the confines of this reauthorization to pursue pathways that interrupted that system and flow of that important post-event recovery capital. So I'm very pleased, as my friend from Missouri knows, that Ranking Member Waters and I have worked to include some small but important reforms to the post-event process to make sure that policy holders can get their claims paid more fully and quickly the way that TRIA intended. Simply put, TRIA should always be about putting affected policyholders first, and that is represented in the bill text that we're voting on today. I thank the gentleman from Missouri for yielding, and I yield back to him.
Gentleman from Missouri is recognized.
Speaker, I have no further speakers, and I'm prepared to close if the gentleman from Arkansas has no further speakers.
I have no further speakers, Mr. Speaker, and I yield to the gentleman from Missouri.
Gentleman from Missouri is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself the balance of the time.
Gentleman is recognized.
TRIA exists because the private market left alone will not provide adequate terrorism risk insurance for businesses, universities, and policyholders. The losses are too large and too unpredictable for private insurers to price or absorb alone. We learned this after September 11th, when coverage all but vanished and commercial reconstruction stalled in New York City. Congress stepped in with a federal backstop, and for over 2 decades, TRIA has kept the market functioning. H.R. 7128 reauthorizes that federal reinsurance program for 7 years, extending certainty to small businesses, hospitals, universities, and not-for-profits that rely on it. This is a bipartisan piece of legislation, and with TRIA set to expire at the end of 2027, passing this bill now by reauthorizing it through 2034 with sensible, targeted updates is both timely and necessary. I again urge my colleagues to support this bill and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Missouri yields back. The gentleman from Arkansas is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself the remainder of my time.
The gentleman is recognized.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I want to echo agreement with Ranking Member Cleaver's words today, as well as the chairman of our subcommittee, Mike Flood, and his hard work on both sides of the aisle to bring forward this 7-year reauthorization of this critically important program well in advance of its expiration. What I love about this is the work of the majority and the minority working together for the benefit of the American economy are getting this done, Mr. Speaker, well in advance of any loss or gap in coverage. And we know it's important. We treasure the fact that we're in the semi-quincentennial year of our country's life, 250 years after the Declaration of Independence. But everybody in the back of their mind on this House floor in the coming weeks will be thinking about another anniversary, one that we're not celebrating with fireworks or bands or parades, and that's sadly the 25th anniversary of the terror attacks on Washington, New York, and our country at large. And it makes us sad, and we reflect on those who we lost, the claims that we're still paying, the families that are still mourning. And this bill is an important reminder that we have an obligation to our country to do things right, to be thinking about the future, to be thinking about our nation's economic growth, prosperity, and the safety of the American people. And so I want to urge my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to answer the call today and support this 7-year reauthorization of our terror risk insurance program. And I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Arkansas yields back. The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill H.R. 7128 as amended? Those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, 2/3 being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended, the bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid
Mr.
on.
Speaker?
For what purpose does the gentleman from Arkansas seek?
I'd request the yeas and nays.
The yeas and nays are requested. All those in favor of taking a vote by the yeas and nays will rise and remain standing until counted. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, further proceedings on this question will be postponed.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Wisconsin seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I move that the House suspend the rules and pass H.R. 4662.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 4662, a bill to designate the facility of the United States Postal Service located at 6444 San Fernando Road in Glendale, California, as the Paul Ignatius Post Office.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Grothman, and the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Supermeyer, will control 20 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Wisconsin.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous material on this measure.
Without objection.
I yield myself such time as I may consume. Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of this bill, which would rename a post office in Glendale, California, for Paul Ignatius, a City of Glendale native. Paul commissioned as a naval officer in World War II following his graduation from the University of Southern California. He continued his education after his military service at Harvard University, receiving an MBA. Paul served 2 presidential administrations as Assistant Secretary of the Army, Undersecretary of the Army, Assistant Secretary of Defense, and Secretary of the Navy. He's the recipient of the Army Distinguished Civilian Service Award, the Navy Distinguished Public Service Award, the Department of Defense Distinguished Public Service Award. In addition to his numerous accolades, an Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyer ship was named after him, which is currently homeported in Rota, Spain. After spending his career dedicated to public service in the country, Paul was an active member in his community, involved in various nonprofit organizations, and served on several boards. I call on my colleagues, my House colleagues, to support this bill, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves from Virginia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in support of H.R. 4662 to designate the facility of the United States Post Office located at 644 San Fernando Road in Glendale, California as the Paul Ignatius Post Office. And I yield 3 minutes to my friend, the Congresswoman from California, Representative Friedman, to discuss this bill.
Lady is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in strong support of my bill to designate the United States Postal Service facility on San Fernando Road in Glendale, California, as the Paul Ignatius Post Office. Let me start by thanking my colleagues for bringing this legislation to the floor and giving us the opportunity to come together, set aside our differences, and honor a truly outstanding American. Paul Ignatius was born in Glendale in 1920 to Armenian immigrant parents who escaped horrific persecution and genocide overseas. They put down roots on San Fernando Road, the same streets where, as a young man, Paul clerked at the post office that will carry his name should this bill pass. Paul went on to answer the call in World War II as a naval officer and served 8 years across 2 presidential administrations as Assistant Secretary of the Army, Undersecretary of the Army, Assistant Secretary of Defense, and ultimately as Secretary of the Navy. He earned too many awards to list here today, but they include the Army, Navy, and Department of Defense Distinguished Public Service Awards. The Navy named a guided missile destroyer after him, the SS Paul Ignatius. After serving our Navy in the military, he went home and kept giving back to his community well past his 100th birthday. Sadly, he passed away last fall at the age of 104. As we approach our nation's 250th anniversary, I keep coming back to his story, the son of Armenian immigrants who fled persecution and built a new life in this country, who answered the call to serve under presidents of both parties, and who went home and continued giving back to their community until the very end. He's the kind of American we should all aspire to be. There's a reason this legislation has brought together the California delegation, Democrats and Republicans, and an independent, because there's nothing partisan about honoring a patriot like Paul Ignatius. It's simply the right thing for us all to do. I want to thank my colleagues again for their support, and I urge passage of this bill. Thank you, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Yields back.
Mr. Speaker, having no further speakers, I'm prepared to close.
All right.
I have no further
Gentleman from
speakers.
Virginia is recognized.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, I encourage my colleagues to join me in honoring the life of Mr. Ignatius by naming this post office after him, and I urge the passage of H.R. 4662 and yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Wisconsin.
I have no further speakers as well. I encourage my colleagues to support this bill naming a post office for Paul Ignatius, a dedicated soldier and public servant, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill H.R. 4662? Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. Opinion of the chair, 2/3 being in the affirmative, the ayes have it. The rules are suspended. The bill is passed. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. For what purpose does the gentleman from Wisconsin seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I move the House suspend the rules and pass H.R. 3350.
Clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 3350, a bill to designate the facility of the United States Postal Service located at 340 East 1st Street in Tustin, California, as the Ursula Ellen Kennedy Post Office Building.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Grothman, the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Subramaniam, each will control 20 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Wisconsin.
I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks, including extraneous material on this measure.
Without objection.
I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of this bill, which would rename a post office in Tustin, California, for Ursula Ellen Kennedy. Ursula and her husband raised 3 children in Tustin, California. She's an accomplished author, publishing more than 500 articles and a book on essays. In 1978, Ursula became the first woman ever elected to the Tustin City Council. 12 years later, Ursula became the first woman elected to mayor, where she served for 2 terms. Through her dedicated leadership to the city of Tustin, Ursula contributed to the creation of senior services, community planning, and environmental protections, leaving a lasting civil legacy. She'll be remembered for her humor, persistence, and relentless work ethic. I call on my House colleagues to support this bill and reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserved. Gentleman from Virginia.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I join my colleagues in supporting this bill. I encourage my colleagues to join me in supporting the life of Mayor Kennedy and her public service for the city of Tustin, California by naming this post office after her, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. Wisconsin.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 4 minutes to the gentlewoman from California, Ms. Kim.
Gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the gentleman for yielding. I rise today in strong support of H.R. 3350 to designate a post office in the city of Tustin in Southern California as the Ursula Ellen Kennedy Post Office Building. Ursula Ellen Kennedy made history as the first woman elected to the Tustin City Council and the first woman to serve as mayor of Tustin. At a time when few women held public office, Ursula stepped forward to serve the city she loved. In 1978, she was elected to the Tustin City Council, and 6 years later, her colleagues chose her to serve as Tustin's mayor. But her story did not begin in City Hall. While raising her family, she became a writer, publishing more than 500 articles and a book of essays. In her 40s, she enrolled in law school, earned her degree, passed the bar, and built a career as an attorney while raising her family. Ursula came to City Hall to build a stronger Tustin. When the city's planning commission was disbanded, she fought to restore it because she believed residents deserved a voice in their community's future. She helped guide the development of East Tustin into the neighborhood we know today as Tustin Ranch. She also championed the senior center that still serves residents today, helping bring it from vision to reality. More than 3 decades later, it remains a lasting testament to her leadership. Ursula Kennedy passed away in 2024 at the age of 87. She is remembered as a woman of vision, humor, fairness, and heart, and lives behind a loving family who continues her legacy. While we can never fully repay leaders like Ursula Kennedy, dedicating this post office ensures her legacy lives on in the community she helped build. I thank the Kennedy family for working with me on this bill, and I urge my colleagues to support H.R. 3350, and may Ursula Kennedy's life continue to inspire us all. Thank you, and I yield back.
From Wisconsin.
I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Virginia is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I'm prepared to close.
Gentleman from Virginia is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I urge my colleagues to support me in passing H.R. 3350 and yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields.
I encourage my colleagues to support this bill naming a post office for Ursula Ellen Kennedy, an author, mother, and dedicated leader in public servants. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill H.R. 3350? Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, 2/3 being in the affirmative, the ayes, the rules are suspended. The bill is passed. And without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Hold tight. Ready? For what purpose does the gentleman from Kentucky seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I move that the House suspend the rules and pass the bill, H.R. 7757, as amended.
The clerk will report the bill, will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 7757, a bill to protect children and teens online, empower parents, and strengthen families, and for other purposes.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from Kentucky, Mr. Guthrie, and the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Pallone, each will control 20 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Kentucky.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks on the legislation and to insert extraneous materials on H.R. 7757.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself as much time as I may consume.
Recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in strong support of H.R. 7757, the Kids Internet and Digital Safety Act, or the KIDS Act. This legislation is the most comprehensive, impactful children's online safety package Congress has considered. I want to thank Ranking Member Pallone for his partnership and leadership on this issue. Protecting children should not be a partisan issue, and I appreciate his commitment and us working together to find common ground to address the very real challenges facing families today. Before I continue, I want to recognize 2 parents who are with us in the gallery today. Deb Schmel, mother of Becca, and Maureen Millark, mother of David. They have experienced every parent's worst nightmare, losing a child because of online harms. Thank you for your courage in sharing your stories and for turning unimaginable loss into tireless advocacy to help protect other children and families. Your presence here today reminds us of what is at stake, and your voices have helped shape this legislation. A key part of our approach was negotiating a package of impactful provisions. We worked hard to reach a workable compromise. The KIDS Act incorporates 13 bipartisan member priorities from across the House to empower parents, protect children and teens' privacy, and hold big tech and online forums accountable. The bill protects platforms. The bill requires platforms to protect kids by default, including limiting addictive and dangerous design features and risky messaging functions. It gives parents stronger tools to monitor and manage their children's online experiences, establishes safeguards for AI chatbots, creates new protections in online gaming environments, and requires age verification for pornography websites to ensure kids cannot access explicit content. The legislation also modernizes children's privacy protections by requiring parental consent before collecting information from children under 14 and extending important new privacy protections to teenagers under 18. At its core, this legislation sends a simple message. Children deserve safer online experience. Parents deserve a greater voice in their children's digital lives, and technology companies must be held accountable when they fail to protect young users. While no single bill will solve every challenge facing families online, this legislation represents a significant and long overdue step forward in establishing meaningful safeguards. It is an important milestone, not a finish line, in the effort to better protect children online and bad actors and hold them accountable. I urge my colleagues to support this bipartisan legislation and I reserve the balance of my time.
The chair reminds members not to refer to persons in the gallery. Gentleman from New Jersey is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
So moved.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today in strong support of the KIDS Act, which is, as my chairman has mentioned, bipartisan legislation to protect kids online and rein in big tech. And I do want to thank our Chairman Guthrie for all his work on this. The internet, social media, and now artificial intelligence have profoundly changed how kids and teens connect with families and friends, how they learn about what's happening around them, and how they participate in an ever-changing online world. And while there have been positive advancements, our kids are also suffering from big tech's chokehold on their attention and the relentless pursuit to keep them connected to their platforms. Big tech is using reckless practices to surveil our kids and teens, exploit vulnerabilities to turn a profit, and promote engagement regardless of the consequences. And for too long, Big tech has had a free pass while kids and teens face real harm online, including predatory design features, dangerous AI chatbots, and data brokers profiting off their personal information. And we simply cannot allow this to continue. It's long past time for Congress to step in and pass legislation that protects our kids and teens and reins in big tech. Now, the Bipartisan Kids Act does just that. It's a comprehensive bill that addresses a problem everyone in Congress cares deeply about, and that's keeping kids and teens safe online. The KIDS Act mandates safeguards, parental tools, and policies across video games, social media platforms, including social gaming platforms like Roblox and chatbots. Platforms are required to limit addictive design features, restrict sharing minors' geolocation data, turn off personalized recommendation systems that drive user engagement, and a lot more. And the KIDS Act also changes the business incentives driving big tech's desire to keep kids on their platforms by protecting minors' data and expanding these critical privacy protections from the current age of 12 to teens up to the age of 17. The bill also bans targeted advertising to kids and teens and ensures that websites can only collect and retain limited kids' data that is necessary to provide a product or service. It also requires data brokers that sell minors' data to register with the Federal Trade Commission and pay an annual fee, bringing transparency to a secretive process and a crucial first step towards ending the practice of data brokers selling kids' data. And, Mr. Speaker, I can't express enough gratitude to all of the parents who have shared their stories and fought for Congress to come together and take action to save other parents from ever experiencing what they went through. I know there are parents who would like Congress to go even further than the KIDS Act, and I want to be clear. The KIDS Act is a floor, not a ceiling. The preemption language in the KIDS Act is written with the explicit intent of ensuring that states have the authority to pass and enforce stronger state laws, including those with a duty of care. It's also intended to ensure that ongoing lawsuits against social media companies, chatbots providers, and social gaming companies brought by state attorneys general and attorneys on behalf of parents and kids can continue, including those based on a duty of care and consumer protection laws. So I'm proud to lead this legislation alongside Chairman Guthrie. For many months now, the Energy and Commerce Committee has been working on legislative solutions to protect our kids and teens online, and this comprehensive bipartisan bill is the result of those ongoing negotiations. This is an example of how the Energy and Commerce Committee works its best. I'm also grateful for the tireless work of Representative Castor, a senior committee member who has been a steadfast champion of the strongest possible protection for kids online. So I urge my colleagues to vote yes on the KIDS Act to make the internet a safer place for our kids and teens, and I reserve the balance of my time, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman reserves.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will yield 4 minutes to the author of this legislation who's worked tirelessly on this legislation, who's the chairman of the subcommittee was responsible for this piece of legislation, my good friend from Florida, Mr. Bilirakis.
Thank you,
Gentleman
Mr.
from Florida.
Chairman. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to speak in strong support of H.R. 7757, the Kids Internet and Digital Safety Act, or the KIDS Act. This package will finally give parents real tools to protect their kids online. A key provision in the KIDS Act is my Kids Online Safety Act, or KOSA. I've been working on COSA, Mr. Speaker, for 3 years, and I'm proud to see it finally reach the House floor. The need for action has never been clearer. Nearly half of American teenagers say they are online almost constantly. About half spend 4 or more hours a day on screens for leisure, and 95% have a smartphone in their pocket, placing them in a digital environment that too often prioritizes engagement and profit over safety. Big tech platforms are not neutral. Their algorithms are designed to maximize attention, not protect kids. Kids are pushed toward harmful content, Mr. Speaker, harmful content, targeted by predatory actors and funneled into design features built to keep them scrolling longer. Families across the country have paid the price, Mr. Speaker, from exploitation and harassment to content content that fuels anxiety, depression, eating disorders, and self-harm, unfortunately. That's why this bill and COSA in particular are so very important. It establishes clear targeted obligations for large online platforms to take steps to prevent and mitigate specific harms to minors. It focuses on addressing documented risks such as sexual exploitation, drug and alcohol abuse, eating disorders, and self-harm content that can be amplified through algorithmic recommendation systems and engagement-driven design. COSA requires platforms to put in place concrete safeguards, limiting harmful design features, improving transparency around how systems impact children, and giving parents strong tools to understand and manage their children's online experiences. It also ensures big tech is held accountable for their decisions through FTC enforcement and state attorneys general. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the chairman of the full committee and the staff, the excellent staff. We never gave up. We persevered, and we have a good product thanks to them. And I want to thank the ranking member as well, Pallone and Ms. Castor, for working with me on this piece of legislation. Again, the chairman gives me credit, but he is responsible as well. But again, the goal is to protect the kids, and I appreciate all the input from the parents over the years. So let's get this across the finish line and protect our children. And I'll yield back. Thank you.
Gentleman reserves.
And Mr. Speaker, I yield 3 minutes now to a member of our committee, the gentlewoman from Virginia, Ms. McClellan.
Gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in support of H.R. 7757, the Bipartisan Kids, Internet, and Digital Safety Act, or the KIDS Act. As a member of Gen X, who is a mom to a Gen Z teen and a Gen Alpha tween, I struggle every day to find the balance between giving our kids the freedom they need to develop and grow and keeping them safe. And I see every day that the digital world kids face today is unlike anything previous generations have faced before. Every day, innovators launch new technologies, applications, and online platforms that create incredible opportunities for learning, creativity, and connection. But those same innovations also create new opportunities for those who would do our kids harm. New risks from invasive data collection to cyberbullying to online exploitation and harmful content. And it is much harder for parents or other trusted adults today to protect kids from these harms that they often don't see in an ecosystem they often don't understand. It's past time for Congress to act before more children are put at risk. We're probably 20 years too late. We can't wait anymore. The KIDS Act closes critical gaps in federal law by strengthening privacy protections for children and teens, banning targeted advertising to minors, limiting unnecessary data collection, giving parents and teens greater control over personal information, and increasing transparency for data brokers, and requiring online platforms to implement stronger default safety tools that reduce harmful interactions. And notably, it preserves every state's ability to go even further. And while this package does not include everything that we'd like to see, we cannot let the perfect become the enemy of the good. And this bill is a critical first step. Our children deserve to enjoy the benefits of technology without sacrificing their privacy, their safety, or their mental health. And I want to thank Ranking Member Pallone and Chairman Guthrie for bringing Democrats and Republicans on the committee together to produce this significant bipartisan legislation at a time when most people believe bipartisanship is dead. Thank you, and I yield back.
The gentlelady yields. The gentleman from New Jersey reserves. The gentleman from Kentucky is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will yield 3 minutes to the gentlelady from Iowa, who is a fantastic member of our committee. He's worked hard on these issues on protecting children. So I yield 3 minutes to my good friend, Dr. Miller Meeks.
The gentlelady from Iowa is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Chairman Guthrie, who has done a fabulous job of shepherding this through Energy and Commerce in a bipartisan manner. Protecting children and teens online is one of the most urgent responsibilities we face as policymakers. As digital platforms become central to how young people learn, communicate, innovate, and navigate the world, we must ensure that these spaces are safe, transparent, and designed with their well-being as the driving priority. My bill, the Spy Kids Act, included in Title II of the Kids Act, takes an important step toward that goal by prohibiting online platforms from conducting market research or product-focused research on children under 13, and by requiring verifiable parental consent before such research can be conducted on teenagers. The bill applies to user-generated content platforms that use engagement-driven design features and personal data to tailor ads or recommendations, such as social media companies and social gaming platforms. This legislation matters because the online environment our kids encounter today is fundamentally different from anything previous generations experienced. Platforms are engineered to capture attention, collect sensitive information, shape behavior, force content, and it's in ways that young users may not recognize or be able to navigate safely. Children and teens should not be profiled, studied, or targeted for commercial advantage, especially without parental oversight. By limiting how platforms can analyze and monetize minors' data, the Spy Kids Act helps reduce the risk of manipulative marketing practices, strengthens privacy protections, and reinforces the principle that the well-being of America's youth must come before the business models of technology companies. Our goal is simple: to build an online ecosystem where children can grow, learn, innovate, and connect without being exploited in the process. I urge my colleagues to vote yes on this bill, and with that, Mr. Speaker and Mr. Chair, I yield back.
I reserve.
The gentleman from Kentucky reserves. The gentleman from New Jersey is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield now 3 minutes to another member of our committee, the gentlewoman from Massachusetts, Ms. Trahan.
The gentlewoman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I thank the ranking member for yielding and for his strong leadership on this vitally important issue. When I joined the Energy and Commerce Committee 6 years ago, I committed to doing everything in my power to make the internet a safer place for my children, my 2 young daughters specifically. In the years since, I've sat in hearing after hearing where we've talked about doing something to deliver on that promise. I've met with parents who have lived every family's worst nightmare, parents whose children harmed themselves and even ended their lives because executives in Silicon Valley cared more about their stock price than the safety of our children. I looked those parents in the eye. I cried with them as they told their story. And then I went home to have hard conversations with my 2 girls about how the apps they use, Instagram, TikTok, and others, are engineered to make them doubt their image and question their worth. For years, this crisis has gone unanswered, decades at this point. Our children have been left to navigate one of the most powerful and manipulative technologies ever built, and they've been left to do it alone. Well, this bill ends that. To be clear, Mr. Speaker, the Kids Act doesn't solve every problem, but it makes one heck of a dent. It finally gives kids and teens overdue privacy protections. It forces platforms to turn on safeguards by default instead of burying them where no parent can find them. It puts tools in the hands of moms and dads, and it makes companies answer for the worst harms that they allow on their platforms. Is it everything I want? No. I've heard from parents and advocates who believe we should go further, and they're right that this fight isn't over. We can and must continue to build upon this progress, but I refuse to tell families to wait for a better political moment or for a perfect bill that may never come when meaningful protections are in front of us right now. And critically, these are protections built to last, not ones written to be struck down in court on the day they take effect. So I want to thank Ranking Member Pallone for his commitment to these negotiations, and I want to acknowledge the work of leaders on the committee on this issue, including Congresswoman Kathy Castor and Congresswoman Yvette Clarke. Today we passed the KIDS Act. Tomorrow we keep fighting for safer digital spaces for every child, especially with the rise of artificial intelligence. I urge my colleagues to vote yes, and I yield back the balance of my time. Thank you.
The gentlelady yields back. The gentleman from New Jersey reserves. The gentleman from Kentucky is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to yield 3 minutes to a great committee member from Florida, who not only is just a great committee member on our committee, but is also one of the judicial minds on our committee who has a great legal scholar. And so it takes great pride that I will yield 3 minutes to the gentlelady from Florida, Ms. Lee.
The gentlelady from Florida is recognized for 3 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today in support of H.R. 7757, the Kids Internet and Digital Safety Act, or the KIDS Act. Children today are growing up in a digital world that looks dramatically different than it did just a generation ago. While technology has created tremendous opportunities to learn and to connect, it has also exposed young people to online predators, sexual exploitation, privacy violations, and increasingly sophisticated threats driven by artificial intelligence. Parents are doing everything they can to protect their children online, but should not have to navigate these challenges alone. This legislation includes 2 bipartisan bills that I have been honored to lead. The first is the Promoting a Safer Internet for Minors Act. I want to thank my co-lead and fellow Floridian, Darren Soto, for his support and partnership on this legislation. This bill recognizes that education is one of the strongest tools we have to protect children before they become victims. It directs the Federal Trade Commission to establish a nationwide public awareness campaign that equips parents, educators, and communities with practical, up-to-date guidance on helping children navigate the internet safely and responsibly. The second is COPPA 2.0, which I am proud to lead along with Congressman Tim Walberg. When Congress enacted the Online Children's Privacy Protection Act nearly 3 decades ago, social media did not exist, and online platforms were not collecting massive amounts of personal information to build user profiles and deliver targeted advertising. This bill brings our privacy laws into the modern era by extending important protections to teenagers, limiting unnecessary data collection, prohibiting targeted advertising to children and to teens, creating clear expectations for tech platforms, and giving families greater control about their personal information. Together, these provisions reflect a simple principle. Protecting children online requires both empowering families with the information they need and ensuring that online platforms handle children's personal information responsibly. Technology will continue to evolve, and our laws must evolve with it. I am grateful to Chairman Guthrie, Subcommittee Chairman Bilirakis, and my colleagues on the committee for their partnership in advancing this legislation, and I urge all of my colleagues to support the KIDS Act. Thank you, and I yield back.
I reserve.
The gentleman from Kentucky reserves. The gentleman from New Jersey is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll yield 3 minutes now to another member of our committee, Dr. Schreier from Washington State.
The gentlelady from Washington is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as a mom and a pediatrician and a member of Congress, I rise today to support the advancement of the KIDS Act to take some serious steps to protect our kids and their data online and hold big tech accountable. The KIDS Act includes my bill, the Kids Online Safety Act, which will ensure that social media companies provide protections and guardrails for kids online and are held accountable for the many harms they are causing to our kids, from sleeplessness to eating disorders to self-harm and even harm from others. Social media companies have gone largely unregulated for decades, all while they have become an omnipresent and bigger part of everyday life, including for kids. In my 20 years as a pediatrician, I have seen the rise of mental and behavioral health concerns for kids and teens coincide directly with the rise of screen time and social media. It is long past time to hold big tech and social media accountable. This package includes many useful tools for parents to keep their kids safe online, but parents can't do it alone. This package isn't perfect, and I want to see even more come out of negotiations with the Senate. That's why I'm continuing to call for a duty of care and language that goes further to hold social media companies accountable for the many harms that their platforms are causing, including serious mental health issues like anxiety, depression, addiction, eating disorders, and suicidality. But this package represents the first time in decades that we've had a chance in the House to take a step forward to finally passing comprehensive legislation to protect our kids. And I strongly urge my colleagues to support it today so we can make it even stronger. Thank you, and I yield back.
The gentlelady yields back. The gentleman from New Jersey reserves. The gentleman from Kentucky is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to yield 5 minutes to my good friend from the state of Illinois who has worked really hard to have an important part of this package. And I will yield 5 minutes to my good friend, Ms. Miller from Illinois.
The gentlelady from Illinois is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Chairman Guthrie, for your important leadership. The statistics are alarming. The average age of a child's first exposure to pornography is just 12 years old, and nearly 80% of America's children between 12 and 17 have already been exposed to it. Not only has the sexual content become intentionally easier to access, but it has also become increasingly violent and abusive, normalizing sexual assault, physical violence, and non-consensual acts for young, impressionable minds. The consequences are devastating. Research has linked early exposure to pornography with anxiety, addiction, depression, low self-esteem, body image disorders, and an increased likelihood that minors will engage in risky and harmful sexual behavior. States across America have recognized this crisis. More than a dozen have declared children's exposure to pornography a public health crisis, and more than 24 states have enacted age verification requirements for adult websites. Last year, the Supreme Court upheld Texas' age verification law. The court ruled that the burden placed on adults to verify one's age is incidental when the intent is to protect the innocence of the children. For that reason, I am grateful that Chairman Guthrie included SCREEN Act in this legislative package. Senator Mike Lee and I drafted this legislation to establish age verification requirements for adult websites, creating a minimum requirement that every state must meet while allowing flexibility to enact stronger protections for children. I am a strong supporter of the First Amendment, but constitutional law has long recognized that its protections do not extend to obscenity. Our laws already require age verification to purchase alcohol, tobacco, firearms, or to enter a casino. We recognize that some products and activities are simply inappropriate for children. Pornography should be no different. The SCREEN Act is one of the most consequential bills to protect children in the digital age. Today, we have an opportunity to make the internet safer for the next generation, and I urge all my colleagues to support this legislation. Thank you again to Chairman Guthrie for including my bill in this package, and I yield back.
I reserve.
The gentleman from Kentucky reserves. The gentleman from New Jersey is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I now yield 4 minutes to another member of our committee who also happens to be the ranking member of our Energy Subcommittee and has been very much involved with this issue and the Kids Act from the very beginning, and that is Ms. Castor of Florida. 4 minutes.
The gentlelady is recognized for 4 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank the ranking member for yielding the time. Members, this is a very important step forward to protect our kids online. I really arrived here more as a parent than a member of Congress, watching 2 daughters grow up at a time when the internet and social media was evolving, and just understood from a very personal level what was happening. And then being here in Congress, listening to parents whose children had suffered online harms, whether that was suicide, cyberbullying, the evidence really is overwhelming now about the online risk and the physical and mental harm suffered by kids. Over 40% of kids under 12 are exposed to inappropriate material within their first month on social media. Cyberbullying, violent and graphic content, excessive screen time is linked to significantly higher rates of anxiety and depression among teens, with those spending 4 or more hours online daily, more than twice as likely to when you spend that much time, you're more than twice as likely to report symptoms of both. My colleagues on the Energy and Commerce Committee and I have spent a number of Congresses, working with advocacy groups and parents about the best way to combat the harms experienced by young people online. The underlying record is replete with evidence from psychologists, pediatricians, and teachers about the impact that big tech has on our kids. I've submitted their stories, reports, and research for the record as we update the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, a law that is outdated, that now will cover teens and provide much greater safety and privacy for young people. I'd like to incorporate all of these stories and everything in the record by reference here today. This includes the testimonies, coalition letters, and advisory from the Surgeon General, all showing that compulsive social media use is harmful to the health of our kids. As digital threats evolve, so must our laws. The Bipartisan Kids Act before us today responds to these realities with strong common sense safeguards. This has been a long time coming, and I really want to thank Chairman Guthrie for bringing it in for a landing. My good friend, Chairman Gus Bilirakis, and I have worked on COSA. My ally on privacy, Representative Wahlberg, and now Representative Lee, who came on this Congress. Ranking Member Pallone, also Rep. Trahan, the professional staff who really listened to the parents. I know it's not the be-all, end-all, and they have my commitment to keep pressing for the strongest privacy protections and design code protections. I hope the Senate adopts a very strong bill. It's there, the ball is going to be in their court now after the House passes the Kids Act today, but this is an important step for kids and parents and families in America. How do we keep up with the technological innovations? How do we keep up with what big tech wants to do to monetize children's time online? They deserve the protections here today. They deserve this strong step forward. And I again thank my colleagues and urge a strong yes vote and yield back my time.
The gentlelady yields back. The gentleman from New Jersey reserves. The gentleman from Kentucky is recognized.
I reserve and have no further speakers, so prepare to close.
Is the gentleman from New Jersey prepared to close?
Yes.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, let me say, first of all, I just want everyone to understand that this Kids Act mandates safeguards, parental tools, and policies to keep kids safe across the internet, from social media to video games to chatbots. Secondly, the bill adds data minimization language, and this is so important, to minimize the amount of data that can be collected. And this is to prevent excessive data collection for kids and teens, provides rights to delete, access, and correct data to teens and parents of children, and bans targeted advertising to kids and teens. And this bill reflects months of bipartisan negotiation between myself, and Energy and Commerce Committee Chairman Guthrie, Mr. Bilirakis, Ms. Castor, to arrive at a package of bills that will provide meaningful baseline protections for kids online without stopping further progress in the states. We do not preempt the states from taking further action. And I strongly believe this bill provides a path to passage here in the House and also in the Senate. And I would ask members on a bipartisan basis to support the bill, and I yield back.
The gentleman from New Jersey yields back. The gentleman from Kentucky is recognized.
I yield myself the balance of my time.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I thank the ranking member for those data protections. That's been very important and big part of the negotiations and being the great advocate for that. And I really appreciate it. I mentioned Ms. Smell and Ms. Millard when we first started. I should mention the staff and the hard work that countless hours meeting with different groups and members meeting with different groups and working hard on this as well, but the staff has as well. And when I first took the chairmanship very early in our chairmanship, my colleagues asked me to chair this committee. We sat down with a group of people and say, what are our priorities? And number one was this bill. Number one was this effort. Number one was this issue. And people talk a lot of times so many young staffers we have on Capitol Hill. Well, they are, and they're also young parents. And I've seen from both sides of the aisle, so a couple of our staff members have different opinions on other issues, but sit down and put that all aside when it comes to their children, America's children. And so I really appreciate the hard work. And I really encourage my colleagues to vote for this bill tonight. I really encourage my colleagues to vote for this bill tonight, because when we vote for this bill tonight, the House will put its imprint, and we have worked with the Senate, but the House will put its imprint to make sure that children are protected, parents are empowered, and big tech is held accountable. I yield back my time.
The gentleman from Kentucky yields back. The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill H.R. 7757 as amended? Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, 2/3 being in the affirmative, for what purpose does the gentleman
Speaker,
from
I request
Kentucky...
the yeas and nays.
The gentleman from Kentucky requests the yeas and nays. All those in favor of taking this vote by the yeas and nays will rise and remain standing until counted. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20. Further proceedings on this question will be postponed. For what purpose does the gentleman from Kentucky seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I move that the House suspend the rules and pass the bill H.R. 7257.
The clerk will report. Does the gentleman intend to call the bill up as amended?
Yes, as amended.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
Union Calendar Number 561, H.R. 7257, a bill to amend the Energy Policy and Conservation Act to require states to include supporting the physical security, cybersecurity, and resilience of local distribution systems in state energy security plans.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from Kentucky, Mr. Guthrie, and the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Pallone, each will control 20 minutes. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Kentucky.
I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks on the legislation and insert extraneous material on H.R. 7257.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself as much time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of H.R. 7257, the Secure Grid Act, sponsored by my colleague in Energy Subcommittee, Chairman from Ohio's 5th Congressional District, Mr. Latta. State energy security plans are an important tool for states to consider the vulnerabilities in their energy systems. The interconnected nature of our energy system requires constant information sharing and cohesive planning to assess, identify, and address potential threats. During this historic period of exponential demand growth caused by next-generation industries, we need to be even more vigilant against adversaries that seek to undermine U.S. competitiveness. The Secure Grid Act is a timely bill that will enhance a state's ability to manage the security of their energy systems. H.R. 7257 will improve visibility into an evolving threat landscape while ensuring that experts in the energy field can help provide critical insights into complex engineering operations. As technology improvements have the potential to positively transform our economy, these tools can also be used and exploited by bad actors. This bill will ensure the states remain on the cutting edge of innovation and security. I urge my colleagues to support the bill and reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from New Jersey is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself such time as it may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. H.R. 7257, the Secure Grid Act, is a bipartisan bill that renews and enhances the state's ability to consider cyber and physical security protections to their energy systems and promotes collaboration between partners as they develop state energy security plans. These state plans are a part of DOE's State Energy Program, which provides financial and technical assistance to help states with energy planning. It was reauthorized and updated in the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law in 2021, and as part of that reauthorization, plans must now include energy emergency planning to secure the United States against physical and cyber threats. The state energy security plans are an important tool that ensures states are prepared for the worst. The planning process brings together stakeholders and enables a level of coordination across federal and state actors. And this bill helps enhance the parts of those plans that guard against physical and cyber threats by ensuring that they encompass more of our energy system, local power lines, as well as facilities critical to ensuring the supply chain of energy infrastructure-related components. Finally, the bill also bolsters the state's ability to obtain assistance from the Department of Energy, something I hope they will take advantage of as they regularly update their energy security plans. This bill also ensures that the Government Accountability Office will review how DOE and the states execute these programs to ensure that Congress has the best information possible the next time the provision needs to be renewed. So I urge my colleagues to support the bill, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Kentucky is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will yield 5 minutes to the author of this legislation and chairman of the Energy Subcommittee, my good friend from Ohio, Mr. Latta.
The gentleman from Ohio is recognized for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the gentleman from Kentucky, the chair of the full committee, for recognizing me today. I rise in support of H.R. 7257, the Secure Grid Act, which I sponsored with the gentlelady from California's 7th Congressional District. State Energy Security Plans, or SEPs, provide states with an opportunity to identify threats and vulnerabilities in their respective energy networks. This collaborative process ensures that states can stay on the cutting edge of an evolving threat landscape. While the initial exercise of SEPs have meaningfully assisted states managing their energy systems, there is room for improvement to enhance visibility and threat detection and holistically consider disparate vulnerabilities across the sector. The Secure Grid Act achieves this goal by ensuring states incorporate security and resilience of distribution networks. Distribution networks bring wholesale power directly to homes and businesses to keep the lights on, and they also keep the lights on our businesses so they can be up and running. Any threat to the distribution system is a threat to our communities. Importantly, the legislation also brings industry experts to the table during the development of SEPs to ensure state governments are equipped with the resources and operational understanding of the complex infrastructure. In addition, the bill affirms the important leadership role of state governments to protect their energy systems while fostering collaborative partnerships with federal counterparts. Given the state's authority and understandings of their own unique energy needs, it is imperative that they are empowered to develop their own plans while working collaboratively with federal partners. This legislation comes at a timely moment in our nation's history. Throughout the 119th Congress, the Energy Subcommittee of the House Energy and Commerce Committee has held several hearings with experts and administration officials to examine the state of our nation's energy systems. Each day, it becomes ever more apparent that our reliance on energy is growing because of AI advancements, reshoring of manufacturing facilities, and general economy-wide electrifications. Families across the country can be burdened by high energy costs, and we know that there is nothing more expensive than a blackout. We also know that adversarial nations and nefarious actors are actively seeking out any vulnerability in our interconnected energy infrastructure to sow chaos and cause harm to everyday Americans. To combat these efforts, the legislation requires proactive information sharing, constant vigilance, and clear visibility into the widening threat landscape. The Secure Grid Act ensures that state energy offices and their respective governors are able to put processes in place to detect, mitigate, and respond to potential attacks targeting critical infrastructure. The everyday lives of families and businesses are wholly reliant on a secure, reliable, and affordable energy system. Mr. Speaker, for the reasons stated, it's important that the House pass H.R. 7257, the Secure Grid Act. And again, I thank the gentlelady from California's 7th District for her help in this legislation, and I yield back the balance of my time.
I reserve.
The gentleman from Kentucky reserves. The gentleman from New Jersey is recognized.
I have no additional speaker. All right.
The gentleman from New Jersey is prepared to close.
Yes.
The gentleman is recognized.
I just want to say briefly that I think this is an important bill. I would urge my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to support it, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Kentucky is recognized.
I yield myself the balance of my time.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I agree. This is a very important bill. We have interconnected grid. We have to make sure that all states are ensuring that it's secure. I appreciate my friend from Ohio for bringing this before his subcommittee and the full committee, and I appreciate his efforts. And I urge my colleagues to vote yes on 7257, and I yield back.
The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass that bill, H.R. 7257, as amended? Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, 2/3 being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended, the bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. For what purpose does the gentleman from Kentucky seek
Madam
recognition?
Speaker, I move that the House suspend the rules and pass the bill H.R. 7258.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
Union Calendar Number 562, H.R. 7258, a bill to amend the Department of Energy Organization Act with respect to functions assigned to assistant secretaries and for other purposes.
The gentlewoman from Florida, Ms. Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from Kentucky, Mr. Guthrie, and the gentlewoman from Florida, Ms. Castor, will each control 20 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Kentucky.
Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks on the legislation to exert extraneous materials on H.R. 7258.
Without objection,
Madam Speaker, I yield myself as much time as I may consume.
the gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in support of H.R. 7258, the Energy Emergency Leadership Act, sponsored by my colleague, Ms. Lee of Florida. The bill was considered and reported favorably by the committee on a unanimous bipartisan vote because it will strengthen the Department of Energy's important energy emergency mission. The bill requires that the well-established energy emergency and cybersecurity functions at DOE are organized under the leadership of an assistant secretary, which is important to maintaining a high level of leadership in DOE's emergency response and cybersecurity functions. The Energy Emergency Leadership Act will ensure the department has the focused and accountable leadership to more fully protect the public from all the hazards to the energy system, natural or man-made, including emerging threats from our foreign adversaries to the nation's electric grid. A vote for H.R. 7258 is a vote for ensuring strong leadership during energy emergencies for the benefit and safety and welfare for stronger cybersecurity protections in our electricity systems. Madam Speaker, I urge my colleagues to support the bill, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields. The gentlewoman from Florida is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentlewoman is recognized.
Thank you. It's becoming increasingly obvious that our energy system faces numerous threats, whether it's from skyrocketing demand, climate change, or cyber attacks. And it is undeniable that our systems need support to continue delivering reliable and affordable power for Americans. H.R. 7258, the Energy Emergency Leadership Act by Representative Lee of Florida and Representative Landsman is an important bill. It amends the Department of Energy Organization Act. This bill elevates emergency response and cybersecurity responsibilities to the level of Assistant Secretary at DOE. It effectively ensures that the Director of DoD's Office of Cybersecurity, Energy Security, and Emergency Response, or CSER, goes through Senate confirmation. As the grid becomes increasingly complex and faces a host of new challenges, it is critical that ensuring the security of the grid is managed by top officials. DOE already plays an important role in ensuring rapid response to an energy emergency. The subject matter and sector expertise concentrated at DOE is vital for ensuring that threats to the grid are handled quickly and appropriately. H.R. 7258 clarifies in statute the emergency response responsibilities that are assigned to an assistant secretary. This ensures that there will be a consistent and effective leader and coordinator at DOE. Finally, I also want to note that while this bill is focused on the leadership of DOE offices, the reality is the department's ability to respond to threats depends on its capable career staff. The Trump administration has devastated the Department of Energy's professional staff across the board, and I don't want that to be lost in this discussion about how to enhance its response capabilities. Nevertheless, I encourage everyone to support this bill, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentlewoman reserves. The gentleman from Kentucky is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I will yield 4 minutes to my good friend from Florida, the author of this legislation, Ms. Lee.
The gentlewoman is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today in support of H.R. 7258, the Energy Emergency Leadership Act. I want to thank Chairman Guthrie, Ranking Member Castor, for their leadership in moving this bill through committee, and also my colleague, Mr. Landsman from Ohio, for co-leading this bill with me. This legislation passed out of the Subcommittee on Energy unanimously because both Republicans and Democrats on the committee recognized how critical it is to have accountable leadership protecting our electric grid. Today, the United States is experiencing record energy demand, driven by artificial intelligence, data centers, renewed domestic manufacturing, and the widespread electrification across our economy. Meeting that demand safely requires not only robust and reliable generation, but also a secure and resilient grid to deliver it. At the same time, the threats to that grid have never been more serious. State-sponsored actors like Volt Typhoon are actively targeting American critical infrastructure. Physical attacks on grid infrastructure are also on the rise. And for those of us from Florida, energy emergencies are not theoretical, they are a constant reality. After major hurricanes, a large number of Floridians lose power, and rapid federal coordination becomes a serious matter of public safety. H.R. 7258 addresses this directly. It ensures that the Department of Energy's emergency and cybersecurity responsibilities are led by a Senate-confirmed Assistant Secretary, a clear, accountable leader whose role is codified in statute, not left to chance. This is a practical bipartisan solution that will help our federal response and our agencies keep pace with the reality of today's threats. This bill ensures that when an energy emergency strikes, a designated federal official can cut through bureaucratic barriers, coordinate a clear response, and help keep the lights on for American families. Chairman Guthrie, Ranking Member Castor, all of my colleagues, I appreciate our cooperation and our work together on this bill. I urge my colleagues to support H.R. 7258, and I yield back.
I reserve.
The gentleman reserves. The gentlewoman from Florida is recognized.
Reserve.
The gentlewoman
I'm
reserves.
prepared to close.
I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentlewoman yields.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield myself as much time as I may consume. I thank the gentlelady for working together. Both my friends from Florida, most friends from Tampa area. I really appreciate working together, and this is important. It's important to have the right leadership in the right place to make sure we protect ourselves at this vulnerable time. And I will encourage my colleagues to vote for H.R. 7258. Vote yes, and I will yield back the balance of my time.
The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill H.R. 7258? Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, 2/3 being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended, the bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. For what purpose does the gentleman from Kentucky seek recognition?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move the House suspend the rules and pass the bill H.R. 7266 as amended.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 7266, a bill to amend the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act to reauthorize the Rural and Municipal Utility Advanced Cybersecurity Grant and Technical Assistance Program and for other purposes.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from Kentucky, Mr. Guthrie, and the gentlewoman from Florida, Ms. Castor, will each control 20 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Kentucky.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks on the legislation and to exert extraneous materials on H.R. 7266.
Without objection,
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield myself as much time as I may consume.
the gentleman is recognized.
I rise in support of H.R. 7266, the Rural and Municipal Utility Cybersecurity Act, sponsored by Representative Marionette Miller Meeks from Iowa's 1st Congressional District. Throughout the 119th Congress, the Energy and Commerce Committee has held several hearings examining the state of our nation's energy system and the persistent threats facing critical infrastructure. We heard directly from industry experts and administration officials about the ability of adversarial nations to exploit vulnerabilities in our energy infrastructure. We know that rising energy demands and a growing reliance on intricate networks of energy delivery systems could widen attack surfaces and opportunities to cause harm and sow chaos in the daily lives of hardworking Americans. These threats are uniquely concerning for rural communities and small utility operators that do not have the same resources as their investor-owned counterparts. These rural cooperatives and municipal utilities are economic drivers for small towns and remote areas of our country, and they ensure that our small towns and remote areas can participate in the 21st century economy. The H.R. 7266 reauthorizes the Rural and Municipal Utility Advanced Cybersecurity Grant and Technical Assistance Program for 5 years to equip small utilities with the resources necessary to secure their systems and keep the lights on for their communities. Importantly, the RMUC Act streamlines burdensome grant and application practices at the Department of Energy to reduce unnecessary regulatory bureaucracy. By simplifying the funding process, we can get dollars from the agency into the hands of cybersecurity professionals in a way that meets the urgency needed to address our system needs. In addition, this program will leverage the expertise of the Department of Energy by providing targeted technical assistance to cybersecurity operators to enhance threat visibility and implement security protections. Urge my colleagues to support this bipartisan legislation, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves. The gentlewoman from Florida is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield myself as much time as I may consume. H.R. 7266, the Rural and Municipal Utility Cybersecurity Act, sponsored by Rep. McClellan of Virginia, Rep. Miller Meeks from Iowa, is a critical, it reauthorizes a critical program from the bipartisan infrastructure law. This initiative is designed to aid municipal utilities, rural electric cooperatives, and small investor-owned utilities. And the reason this is important is that the cyber threats to our nation's power grid are growing every day, from sophisticated cyber attacks from nation-state actors to AI-enhanced cyber attacks from single criminals. The offensive capabilities of people who would attack our power grid are growing. The only solution is an investment in a robust defense of the grid. While larger utilities may have more resources to invest in cybersecurity, the smaller utilities and nonprofit cooperatives and municipal utilities may not have the resources to spend on sophisticated cyber defenses. The Rural and Municipal Utility Cybersecurity Program steps in to fill the gap, ensuring that those smaller entities get the assistance and the guidance that they need from the Department of Energy. In addition to reauthorizing this important initiative, the bill makes it easier for smaller utilities to access DOE's technical assistance programs, a tweak that should result in more eligible utilities gaining access to DOE's knowledge and resources. I thank Representative McClellan for her work as the co-lead of this bill, and I urge my colleagues to vote yes on it. Madam Speaker, I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentlewoman reserves. The gentleman from Kentucky is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would like to yield 3 minutes to my good friend from Iowa, Dr. Miller Meeks, who has been a leader in this issue, and she stands before us to protect rural and small town America, and that's exactly what her legislation does. And I will yield 3 minutes to Dr. Miller Meeks.
The gentlewoman is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Chairman Guthrie. I rise in support of my bill, H.R. 7266, the Rural and Municipal Utility Cybersecurity Act, a bipartisan bill I'm proud to lead with Congresswoman McClellan to help reauthorize and strengthen a critical program that helps rural and municipal electric utilities defend against growing cybersecurity threats to our nation's energy grid. Just this spring, national security experts warned that hostile nation states are shifting from isolated cyber incidents to sustained campaigns against U.S. critical infrastructure, including the energy sector. Yet many small and rural utilities lack the capacity and expertise to act on this information. Our MUC is designed to close that gap. In Iowa's 1st District, rural electric cooperatives serve ratepayers across 20 counties and face the same threats as major urban systems, but with fewer resources. By reauthorizing the Rural and Municipal Utility Advanced Cybersecurity Grant and Technical Assistance Program at DOE, and authorizing $250 million over 5 years to deploy advanced cybersecurity technologies and support participation in information sharing systems, this bill ensures rural electric cooperatives, public power, and other small utilities have access to advanced cybersecurity tools, technical assistance, and grant funding to protect, detect, respond to, and recover from cyber threats. At a time when cyber attacks on our critical infrastructure are escalating, small and rural utilities need the resources to defend against nation-state actors and sophisticated threats. This bill provides that support. I urge my colleagues to support this legislation, and I yield back.
I'll reserve.
The gentleman reserves. The gentlewoman from Florida is recognized.
Madam Speaker, this time I yield to Ms. McClellan of Virginia as much time as she may consume, and I thank her for her leadership on behalf of rural and smaller municipal utilities and communities across the country.
The gentlewoman's recognized.
Thank you, Representative Castor. Madam Speaker, I rise today in support of the Rural and Municipal Utility Cybersecurity Act, which I'm proud to co-lead with Representative Miller Meeks of Iowa. This bill represents the sort of bipartisan work that is important for the security and stability of the American grid and the safety of the American people. This bill reauthorizes the vital RMUC program, which helps rural and small municipalities to protect themselves against ever-multiplying and more sophisticated cybersecurity threats that could prove severely disruptive to small and rural communities alike, just like the ones that I represent in Virginia's 4th Congressional District. Far too often, these communities lack the resources and the support necessary to defend against malign actors targeting important infrastructure and services, and AI has made it easier for such malign actors to do so. For example, in rural Prince George County, Virginia, in my district, just a couple of weeks ago, fell victim to a cyber incident that impacted the county's payment services. And fortunately, the attack didn't impact other more consequential services, but it serves as an example of why we must take proactive steps to ensure the security of our grid, especially in small and rural communities that are especially vulnerable. Our bill fills those gaps by ensuring that these communities can face the challenges of our increasingly digital world and, in turn, bolster cybersecurity defenses for the entire nation's grid. I'm glad to work with my colleague from Iowa to advance this important bill, and I urge my colleagues to support our legislation and reauthorize this vital program. Thank you, and I yield back.
And we reserve.
The gentlewoman reserves. The
I
gentleman
reserve
from
and am prepared to
Kentucky.
close.
Madam Speaker, I urge a yes vote on the bill and yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Kentucky is
Thank you,
recognized.
Madam Speaker. I appreciate my good friend from Virginia and Iowa working together on this bill. I encourage my colleagues to vote yes on H.R. 7266, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields. The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill H.R. 7266 as amended? Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, 2/3 being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended, the bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. For what purpose does the gentleman from Kentucky seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, I move that the House suspend the rules and pass the bill H.R. 7305 as amended.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
Union Calendar number 563, H.R. 7305, a bill to amend the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act to reauthorize the Department of Energy's Energy Sector Operational Support for Cyber Resilience Program to provide operational support for energy sector cybersecurity and resilience.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from Kentucky, Mr. Guthrie, and the gentlewoman from Florida, Ms. Castor, will each control 20 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Kentucky.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks on the legislation and to insert extraneous material on H.R. 7305.
Without objection.
Madam Speaker, I yield myself as much time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today in support of H.R. 7305, the Energy Threat Analysis Center Act, sponsored by my good friend from Florida, Ms. Castor, and Mr. Evans of Colorado. The bill was reported favorably by unanimous bipartisan vote by the Energy and Commerce Committee. The United States has one of the most complex energy systems in the world, and those systems are essential for the health and welfare of the public, our economy, and our security. Our adversaries know this, and they work persistently to identify and exploit vulnerabilities in our critical energy infrastructure, creating a looming threat for few Americans may appreciate. We must take action to improve our ability to identify, analyze, and share information about these threats to safeguard our systems and mitigate risks and impacts. The Energy Threat Analysis Center, or ETAC, was established at DOE as a DOE pilot program just a few years ago. The program convenes energy sector stakeholders and federal government experts to more effectively identify and address the threats to our critical infrastructure, especially those posed by our nation-state adversaries. Identifying the mitigating threats will become even more urgent as technology advances. The ETAC enables grid operators to see threats our intelligence community and federal experts to better understand system vulnerabilities, improving threat identification. H.R. 7305 reauthorizes ETAC for 5 years and clarifies authorities to enhance collaboration between grid operators, utilities, and the government, including intelligence community. This is a critical operational program to strengthen the collective defense, response, and resilience of our energy sector. I urge my colleagues to support the bill, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves. The gentlewoman from Florida is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield myself as much time as I may consume. And I want to thank the Chairman Guthrie and colleagues on both sides of the aisle for moving forward H.R. 7305, the Energy Threat Analysis Center Act of 2026. I rise in support of my bipartisan bill with Representative Evans of Colorado. Madam Speaker, you know, across the country, our energy infrastructure is under attack from cyber security threats, and I think anyone who's tuned into this debate this afternoon understands it's very serious. Cyber attacks can cause significant disruption to the reliable flow of energy to American homes, businesses, and communities. So protecting our energy infrastructure against these attacks is critical to keeping the lights on, the air conditioning on where I'm from, and lowering energy costs for hardworking American families and businesses. You know, I know Chairman Guthrie agrees with me on this. The U.S. energy grid is remarkable. It is one of the largest, most interconnected systems in the world. It serves over 330 million people, includes over 7,300 power plants, and spans over 600,000 miles of high-voltage transmission lines. It underpins our economy. If it fails, it cascades into failures in multiple other sectors like healthcare, water, transportation, and communications. Unfortunately, our energy system and our grid is also very old. About half of U.S. oil and gas pipelines are over 50 years old, and most transmission lines are well over 25 years old. They were not designed with modern technology and security in mind. And these dangers are not hypothetical. In 2024, U.S. intelligence agencies reported that China had successfully infiltrated and pre-positioned on U.S. critical infrastructure, including our energy systems. The North American Electric Reliability Corporation estimates that the U.S. grid is gaining about 60 new vulnerable points per day as we use more digital devices, deploy new software, and expand distributed energy. 80% of U.S. energy infrastructure is owned by the private sector, so we need to make sure that they're working with the federal government and our intelligence community to confront the risks. Fortunately, we've taken action to address these challenges. In 2023, the Department of Energy launched the Energy Threat Analysis Center. We call it ETAC. ETAC brings together the classified intelligence community, with private energy sector operational professionals in real time. It produces sector-specific threat analysis and mitigation advisories. This is the type of common sense bipartisan cooperation that we should all celebrate. My bill today with Representative Evans strengthens the Department of Energy's ability under ETAC to use information exchanges and facilitate greater public-private collaboration. It helps secure our critical infrastructure, keeps us safe from threats, and lowers energy costs for our neighbors back home. I urge everyone to vote in favor of this bipartisan bill, and I will yield back the balance of my time.
The gentlewoman yields.
I'm prepared to close. I reserve. I'm prepared to close. So I yield myself as the balance of my time. I just want to say thanks. Thanks for the hard work on this bill and your comments on our aging grid, our aging infrastructure. And I know the big work of this committee going forward from through this summer and through this fall is making sure we have the permit reform in place that we can have not only move the energy, like you talked about pipelines and generation, and also transmitting it to where it needs to go. So I look forward to those efforts and want to make that commitment on this floor. We know we're going to work together to get there. But on this particular piece of legislation, thanks for your hard work on the ETAC along with Congressman Evans. And I encourage my colleagues to vote yes on H.R. 7305, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields. The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill H.R. 7305 as amended? Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, 2/3 being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended, the bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Pursuant to Clause 4 of Rule 1, the following enrolled bill was signed by the Speaker on Thursday, June 25th, 2026.
H.R. 6644, to increase the supply of housing in America and for other purposes.
Pursuant to Clause 12A of Rule 1, the chair declares the House in recess until approximately 6:30 p.m. today.